The storm had been chasing Evelyn for hours. By the time her small rental car pulled into the narrow mountain road, the sky was split open with threads of lightning, and the rain hammered down so fiercely that the windshield wipers could barely keep up. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles pale against the dim dashboard light. The sound of the rain wasn't just a backdrop. It was a presence, filling every crevice of the world with its steady, insistent drumming. Evelyn had been driving for longer than she wanted, and the idea of finding somewhere, anywhere, warm and dry to stay for the night was no longer a wish but a necessity. When the first sign came into view, a weathered wooden board that read the Hotel of Sleep, she almost missed it through the blur of water and darkness. The letters were painted in faded ivory, illuminated faintly by a swinging lantern that hung beside it. Something about the name made her chest loosen with relief. She turned onto the gravel path it pointed toward, the car bumping and crunching over loose stone, until headlights revealed a tall, timber-framed building standing against the storm. Its windows glowed with the muted, golden warmth of candlelight, promising refuge. She parked and stepped out into the wet night, umbrella snapping open against the wind. The rain drenched her ankles as she hurried up the short cobbled path toward the grand front doors. The storm's roar dulled once she entered the lobby, replaced by a muffled stillness that was so welcoming she almost sagged with gratitude. The scent of old wood, faint lavender, and something like chamomile tea lingered in the air. A wide stone fireplace crackled to her left, its flames dancing shadows across the rustic beams and velvet armchairs. The storm rumbled beyond the walls, but here it felt like another world, a shelter carved out of the chaos outside. Behind the polished oak counter stood a tall man with silver hair, his posture both formal and gentle. He smiled, as though he'd been expecting her. His voice was soft when he spoke, carrying the kind of cadence that made Evelyn feel like she could finally release her breath. "Welcome to the Hotel of Sleep. You must be tired from your journey." She nodded, too weary to deny it. As he handed her a brass key attached to a smooth wooden fob, she noticed the number etched in elegant script, Room 6. His words, calm and deliberate, felt less like a standard greeting and more like a lullaby. Climbing the staircase with her small suitcase, Evelyn let her eyes drift over the details of the hotel. Worn carpets patterned with curling vines, sconces with flickering candles, and oil paintings of distant hills blanketed in fog. Every sound seemed softened, hushed by the storm outside. When she reached the door to room 6 and turned the key, a gentle creak opened onto a space that immediately embraced her. The bed was piled high with quilts and pillows, the windows slightly ajar so the rain's rhythm could slip inside. Evelyn set her bag down and sat at the edge of the bed, her body sinking into the mattress as if it had been waiting just for her. For the first time all day, she felt safe, truly safe, and the storm outside, instead of being an enemy, became the very song that might carry her into sleep. Evelyn ran her fingers across the quilt, marveling at its texture, thick and hand-stitched, patterned with deep indigos and muted golds. The room itself had a stillness that was both soothing and curious. On the dresser stood a ceramic pitcher filled with fresh water, and beside it a porcelain cup etched with tiny crescent moons. A small lantern burned softly in the corner, its glow pulling the shadows back just enough to reveal every detail without breaking the calm. Outside, the storm raged on, yet the walls of the hotel seemed to transform the noise into rhythm. Less a storm, more a lullaby. She sat quietly, listening to the rain, letting it settle into her bones. Though exhaustion weighed on her shoulders, Evelyn couldn't resist walking to the window. She drew the curtains slightly aside, peering out into the night. The courtyard below shimmered with puddles, reflecting the glow of lanterns that swung in the wind. Beyond that, the mountain slope was barely visible, swallowed by sheets of rain and rolling fog. Lightning lit the world for half a heartbeat, revealing twisted pines at the edge of the grounds. There was something wild, untamed, about this setting, and yet the hotel itself stood firm, as if it had seen countless storms and would see countless more. Evelyn closed the curtain and pressed her palm against the warm wooden frame of the window. It was like the place was alive, holding her steady, whispering that she could rest. A quiet knock startled her. She opened the door to find a woman, perhaps in her 30s, with dark braids and eyes that sparkled kindly even in the dim candlelight of the hallway. She carried a small tray, steam rising from a delicate teapot. "A welcome gift," the woman said softly, her voice almost as calming as the innkeeper's. "Chamomile and lavender. It helps guests settle in." Evelyn thanked her, noticing the faint scent of honey as the woman set the tray on the small bedside table. Before leaving, the woman added, "If the storm keeps you awake, just listen. It has its own way of telling stories." With that, she disappeared down the candlelit hall, her footsteps fading into the hush. Evelyn poured herself a cup of tea, the warmth seeping into her palms as she cradled it. The flavor was sweet, floral, comforting. She curled beneath the quilt and let her body sink deeper into the bed, the rain filling every corner of her awareness like a familiar song. The storm boomed in the distance, thunder rolling through the mountains like a slow drumbeat. But Evelyn found herself breathing in rhythm with it. Each sip of tea softened her edges. Each clap of thunder pulled her closer to dreams. By the time she finished the cup, her eyelids felt heavy, her thoughts slower, blurred around the edges as sleep began to claim her. She thought she heard something, a faint melody layered beneath the storm's rhythm. Not music exactly, but a low, weaving sound, like voices humming from far away. It was subtle, so soft she might have mistaken it for the wind through the eaves. Her mind, fogged with drowsiness, tried to follow the sound, but her body was already surrendering. The last thing she felt was the quilt's weight, the tea's warmth, and the steady lull of rain, carrying her into a deep and dream-thick sleep. The first thing Evelyn noticed was the silence. Not the hush of a storm muted by thick walls, but a deep, complete quiet that pressed against her ears as though the world had paused. She opened her eyes expecting to see her bedroom, the quilt, the teapot, but instead, she was standing barefoot in a long corridor. Its floor was smooth, cool stone veined with silver, and lanterns burned along the walls in steady intervals. The air was neither warm nor cold, carrying only the faintest scent of rain-soaked earth. For a moment, she wondered if she had woken at all, or if she had stepped into something else entirely. She walked forward slowly, her hand brushing the wall. It was not made of timber like the hotel, but pale stone that gleamed faintly in the lantern glow. At intervals, doors lined either side of the corridor, tall and ornate, each bearing a number carved in deep relief. Some of the numbers she recognized, like 6, the room she had been given, while others seemed impossibly high, stretching into the hundreds. She paused at one door, running her fingers across the numbers as if to test their solidity. The wood was cool beneath her touch, but no sound came from beyond it. It was as if the corridor existed outside of time, a place carved out from ordinary reality. The storm was gone. Or perhaps, Evelyn realized, it had been swallowed into this place. In its absence, she could hear something else, that same humming she had noticed before sleep. It was clearer now, resonant, as though a chorus of voices sang from far away. Their tones were layered and low, neither frightening nor cheerful, but steady, like a call meant to guide rather than alarm. The sound seemed to ripple along the corridor, tugging at her gently, urging her to follow deeper. She hesitated, torn between curiosity and unease, then began walking toward the direction where the hum felt strongest. After what felt like minutes, though time here had no real measure, Evelyn reached the end of the hall. A single door stood before her, taller than the rest, framed with carvings of curling vines and storm clouds. The brass handle glowed faintly in the lantern light. The hum was strongest here, vibrating in the very air. She swallowed, her pulse quickening. It didn't feel like danger exactly, but it did feel important, as though opening this door would shift something she didn't fully understand. She reached for the handle. When her hand closed around it, a warmth spread through her palm. The door opened with surprising ease, swinging inward to reveal a vast chamber filled with soft light. The walls shimmered like moving water, and the ceiling arched impossibly high, stars glimmering in the rafters as if the night sky itself had been drawn indoors. At the center stood a figure cloaked in shadow, their outlines shifting, indistinct. They raised their head as if sensing her arrival, and the humming grew louder, wrapping around Evelyn until it seemed to echo inside her chest. She froze at the threshold, breath caught between fear and wonder, realizing she had crossed into a place where dreams carried their own rules. The chamber was vast, yet hushed, the humming sound now rolling in steady waves that seemed to vibrate through Evelyn's bones. She stepped cautiously across the smooth stone floor, her bare feet leaving no echo. The figure at the center remained indistinct, their outlines shifting like mist caught in lamplight. As she approached, the air grew warmer, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked leaves and candle wax. For a moment, Evelyn thought the figure was watching her, though no eyes were visible. When they finally spoke, the voice was layered, like multiple tones woven together into a single current. It was neither male nor female, but something older, more encompassing. "Welcome, traveler," it said, though the words did not so much reach her ears as resonate inside her chest. "You have come to the place where sleep and storm meet." Evelyn swallowed, unsure whether to answer or to simply listen. The figure tilted its head, the hum pausing briefly. "You need not fear. You are safe here." Her voice, when it emerged, felt small against the chamber's enormity. "Where is here?" she asked. "Am I dreaming?" The cloaked figure shifted, and the stars in the ceiling above seemed to ripple, bending as though stirred by wind. "Dreaming? Yes," the figure replied. "But not only dreaming. This place is the corridor between. A way station for the weary. The Hotel of Sleep holds many doors, and you have opened one of them." Evelyn glanced behind her, half expecting the door to have vanished, but it stood there still, though it looked smaller now, distant, as though retreating the longer she remained. The figure extended a hand, long and pale, emerging briefly from the folds of shadow. In its palm rested a small object, a key, carved from crystal that glowed faintly from within. "Each guest who finds their way here is given a key," the figure said. "It is not for locks, but for journeys. Where it leads depends on what you seek." Evelyn hesitated, staring at the delicate, shining key. The thought of taking it stirred both longing and unease, as if she knew instinctively that accepting it meant committing herself to something far larger than she understood. Her fingers trembled as she reached forward. The moment her skin touched the cool surface of the crystal, a rush of sensation coursed through her. The weight of endless rain, the warmth of firelit rooms, the hush of corridors filled with secrets. She gasped softly, clutching the key to her chest. The cloaked figure's voice softened, no longer echoing but close, intimate. "Rest easy, traveler. The hotel will show you the rest in time." Then, just as quickly as it had come into focus, the chamber dimmed, the stars above scattering into darkness. Evelyn felt the world tilt, pulling her downward, and the next thing she knew, she was sinking into the familiar weight of quilts and the steady lull of rain beyond her window. Evelyn awoke to the sound of rain still pattering against the window, though it had softened from the furious storm of the night before. The room was bathed in a pale, silvery light filtering through the curtains, and the quilts around her felt impossibly warm. For a moment, she lay still, clutching the memory of the dream, the corridor of doors, the cloaked figure, and the crystal key that still seemed to weigh in her palm. Her heart beat faster as she opened her hand to look. Of course, it was empty, yet the sensation lingered, as if something unseen had been left behind. She rose slowly, stretching the stiffness from her limbs, and crossed to the window. The courtyard below glistened with dew and rainwater, lanterns now extinguished, the world quieter, calmer. The mountain beyond was wrapped in mist, and for the first time since her journey began, she felt less like a traveler lost in a storm and more like a guest who had stumbled upon exactly the place she was meant to be. Still, the dream tugged at her thoughts, refusing to dissolve into the ordinary haze of sleep. It had been too vivid, too structured, to be the invention of her weary mind. The soft knock broke her reverie. When she opened the door, the same woman with braided hair stood there, balancing a breakfast tray. Steam curled from a cup of tea and a small bowl of porridge drizzled with honey. "Good morning," the woman said, her tone gentle. "The storm has passed, though the rain will linger. Did you sleep well?" Evelyn hesitated before answering. "Yes, though I had the strangest dream." The woman's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Many guests say the same." She left the tray on the bedside table and departed quietly, her footsteps fading like they had the night before. Evelyn sat by the fire with her tea, watching the flames dance. The dream pressed on her mind, not with fear, but with a quiet gravity. She thought of the crystal key and the figure's words. It is not for locks, but for journeys. She wondered if this hotel of sleep was more than a refuge from rain and thunder, if it was also a place designed to guide those who found their way here. Each sip of tea seemed to calm her body but sharpen her thoughts, as though the hotel itself wanted her to remember. Later, she wandered the halls, curious to see more of the place in daylight. The corridors were hushed, carpeted in soft patterns of vines and storms, their sconces unlit now that daylight streamed through tall windows. She passed closed doors, each with a number carved in wood. Some seemed ordinary, but others she could swear bore faint etchings of stars, waves, or clouds. When she paused at her own door, room 6, she thought she felt something beneath her palm, a quiet vibration like the heartbeat of the hotel itself. She pulled her hand back quickly, unsure whether she was imagining things. But one thought was clear. Last night's dream had not been just a dream. It was an invitation, and she had already accepted. After breakfast, Evelyn felt the pull of curiosity. The hotel seemed far larger than she had first imagined, and daylight only sharpened her desire to know more. She stepped into the main corridor, following its soft vine-patterned carpet, her fingers grazing the polished banisters as she descended toward the lobby. The storm had quieted to a misty drizzle, and though she could hear the rain faintly outside, the interior of the hotel remained steeped in its own kind of silence, a silence that was not emptiness, but fullness, as though every wall, every door, every stair was holding something just out of sight. The lobby was brighter than the night before, its stone fireplace now reduced to a gentle glow. Evelyn noticed for the first time the long wooden table near the hearth, where several guests sat with steaming cups of tea or coffee. There was a quiet hum of voices, but not the lively chatter of strangers in a common room. More like a measured, thoughtful exchange between people who had already grown comfortable in one another's company. She hesitated, suddenly unsure of how to introduce herself, until one of them, a tall man in a rain-damp cloak, looked up and smiled faintly. "First night?" he asked, as though the question itself were a ritual. Evelyn nodded, and the group seemed to accept her without fuss. She sat at the edge of the table, listening. The guests were varied. The cloaked man, who introduced himself simply as Nathan, an older woman with sharp, intelligent eyes who seemed to be forever sketching in a worn notebook, and a boy no older than 12 who toyed with a small wooden puzzle box, his mother seated quietly beside him. They spoke in fragments, half-finished sentences, as if words were only the surface of something deeper they all understood. When Evelyn mentioned her dream, she saw no surprise, only a quiet recognition reflected in their faces. Nathan leaned closer, his voice low. "The hotel gives everyone dreams. Some are harder to face than others. But if you were given a key," he trailed off, his eyes narrowing slightly, as though trying to see through her. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She hadn't told him about the key. Before she could ask, the silver-haired innkeeper appeared, setting down a tray of steaming teapots. His presence seemed to shift the room, like the strike of a gentle chord. He greeted each guest by name, then turned to Evelyn with a look that was neither probing nor casual, simply steady, as though he had been aware of her every step. "You'll find," he said softly, "that each guest carries their own piece of the storm. Some come here to rest, others to journey. All are welcome." His gaze lingered on her, and Evelyn wondered whether he, too, knew of the crystal key now hidden in her memory. Later, as she rose from the table and drifted toward the side corridors, she realized the hotel itself seemed to guide her feet. The hallways branched and turned in ways she hadn't noticed before, leading her past closed doors with numbers that seemed to shift when she glanced twice. Some bore subtle carvings of waves or stars, like the one she had glimpsed earlier. Once, as she passed a heavy oak door, she thought she heard faint humming from behind it, the same layered resonance she had followed in her dream. She paused, breath caught, but the sound faded as quickly as it came. And in the silence that followed, Evelyn realized the truth. She was not the only dreamer here. Every guest was carrying their own secret key, their own path waiting to be opened. That evening, after a long, quiet day of drifting through the hotel's halls and listening to the steady rain, Evelyn found herself unable to settle. She had lingered by the fire after dinner, the murmur of the other guests weaving around her like threads in a larger tapestry. Yet even in the comfort of the lounge, she felt something stirring, an itch beneath her skin, a silent call just beyond hearing. When she finally returned to her room, the sensation grew sharper, like the air itself was humming faintly. She knew what it meant before she even admitted it aloud. The key. She drew the curtains closed, leaving only a single candle lit, and lay on the bed with her eyes open. In the stillness, she imagined the crystal key in her hand, its glow steady and patient. To her surprise, she felt a sudden weight pressing against her palm, so real it made her sit upright. Looking down, she saw it, the very key from her dream, its crystalline surface glimmering faintly in the dim candlelight. Evelyn's breath caught. It hadn't vanished with the dream. It had followed her here. The hum grew louder, not from outside but from within the walls of the hotel itself, as though the entire building was vibrating gently. Evelyn rose, the key warm in her grasp, and stepped into the hallway. The sconces flickered with soft golden light, the carpet springing gently beneath her bare feet. She felt no fear, only inevitability. The hotel was guiding her, just as it had in her dream. Doors passed by on either side, their numbers glowing faintly, until she reached one she had not seen before. It was unmarked, no number, no carving, just smooth dark wood, waiting. The key pulsed in her hand. For a moment, she hesitated. She thought of Nathan and the boy with his puzzle box, of the older woman who drew sketches in silence. Were they, too, being guided by unseen keys toward unmarked doors of their own? Perhaps they were already walking corridors like the one she had visited in her sleep. The thought was both comforting and unsettling. She was not alone in this place, but whatever waited behind her door would be hers alone to face. She raised the crystal key and pressed it gently to the wood. The surface rippled, as though the door were made not of wood at all, but of still water disturbed by a pebble. The key slipped through effortlessly, and Evelyn followed, her hand pushing into the shimmering surface. The hum swelled, filling her entire body, and then, without resistance, the door swallowed her whole. She gasped softly, stepping through, and the world of the hotel melted away behind her. The sensation of stepping through the door was like falling into deep water, weightless, muffled, suspended. For a heartbeat, Evelyn could not see or hear, only feel the pulse of the crystal key against her palm. Then the darkness parted, and she found herself standing beneath an endless sky. It was night, but not the night she knew. The stars were vast and impossibly bright, scattered like jewels across a canvas of indigo. A low wind stirred her hair, carrying with it the scent of rain and wildflowers. Before her stretched a garden unlike any she had ever seen. Pathways wound through tall grasses and luminous flowers that glowed faintly, as if lit from within. Trees bent gracefully overhead, their leaves shimmering like silver whenever the breeze touched them. Yet even here, the storm had followed. The horizon was lined with rolling thunderclouds, lightning flashing occasionally in the distance. Instead of feeling threatened, Evelyn felt a strange harmony between the serenity of the garden and the power of the storm. It was as if both forces belonged here, balanced. She walked along the nearest path, the stones beneath her feet smooth and cool. As she moved, the flowers seemed to lean toward her, their glowing petals brushing against her hands. Somewhere deeper in the garden, she could hear that same humming she had followed before, gentle, layered, calling. She followed the sound, her steps slow, her senses alive to every detail. The glint of dew on glowing blossoms, the warmth of the air around her, the rhythm of distant thunder echoing like a heartbeat at the center of the garden. She found a pool of water ringed by stones. Its surface reflected the sky so perfectly that it looked like a window into another world. She knelt beside it, the hum resonating louder here, and when she leaned closer, she gasped. In the water's reflection, she did not see herself. Instead, she saw fragments, a younger version of herself standing in rain, a long-forgotten dream of a house by the sea, the face of someone she had once loved and lost. The images shifted like ripples, each one sharp enough to stir something deep inside her. She reached out, her fingers trembling as they touched the surface. Instead of breaking, the water glowed, sending ripples of light outward into the garden. The thunder above rolled louder, yet it sounded almost like applause. Then a voice, low and familiar, echoed from the pool. To rest is not to forget. To dream is to remember. Evelyn's chest tightened. She wanted to ask what it meant, but the pool brightened suddenly, so much that she had to shield her eyes. When she looked again, the garden was fading, dissolving into light. The hum wrapped around her like a blanket, and she felt herself falling, backward, gently, toward the safety of her own room. The rain had not stopped when Evelyn awoke, though it fell in a gentler rhythm now, steady as breath. She sat at the edge of her bed, the vision of the glowing garden still echoing in her mind. The pool's reflection, the fragments of memory, clung to her like dew on skin. She wondered if the others had walked their own paths last night. The thought lingered as she wandered into the corridor, the hum of the hotel faint but ever present in the quiet halls to the far end of the lounge. Evelyn noticed the boy she had seen before, the one with the puzzle box. He sat curled in a chair too large for him, the wooden box balanced on his knees. His mother dozed nearby, her head resting against the velvet armrest, her face softened by exhaustion. The boy's fingers moved quickly, turning the box's intricate knobs and sliding its panels with the precision of someone who had done it countless times. Yet his expression wasn't one of boredom. It was focus, like each movement mattered more than she could understand. Evelyn crossed the room, drawn by something she couldn't name. Before she could speak, the boy looked up at her, his eyes clear, older than his years. "You saw your door, didn't you?" His voice was quiet, but steady, and it made her breath catch. She nodded slowly. He tapped the puzzle box, and as he did, Evelyn felt the faintest vibration run through the room. The box was glowing, not with light, but with possibility, as if it, too, was a kind of key. Later, when the boy drifted into sleep, Evelyn saw it. The box shifted in his hands, opening a seam that hadn't been there before. A faint glow spilled out, and for a moment the air seemed to ripple. Evelyn glimpsed a doorway forming in the space beside him, not in the walls of the hotel, but as if reality itself had bent to allow it. Through the crack of that door she saw something vast, a forest at twilight, filled with the sound of running water and voices that seemed to call his name. The boy stirred, murmuring something she couldn't catch, and the vision closed as the box sealed itself again. Evelyn sat back, stunned. The boy's dream was no less real than hers. The hotel had offered him a door too, one shaped by his puzzle, his hands, his path. She realized then what the innkeeper's words had meant. Each guest carries their own piece of the storm. The hotel wasn't just shelter. It was a crossing, a place where the storms of people's lives met the stillness of dreams. And in that crossing, each traveler was offered a choice, to rest or to journey. Evelyn thought of the garden, the pool, and the voice that had told her, to dream is to remember. She wondered what the boy had been told in his own secret place. As the fire in the lounge crackled softly, Evelyn glanced at the other guests. Nathan sat by the window, his cloak draped around him, staring into the rain with the expression of someone waiting for something unseen. The older woman continued sketching, her pencil moving quickly, as though her hand were chasing visions she had not yet fully caught. Everyone, she realized, was carrying a secret door inside them, and all those doors seemed to lead deeper into the hotel of sleep. The final question lingered in Evelyn's chest like a whisper of thunder. Where would hers lead next? Rain deepened through the night, not with violence, but with a steady insistence, as though the sky itself had decided to sing. Evelyn sat awake in her room, the crystal key resting warm in her palm, while the memory of the garden's glowing pool pulsed in her thoughts. She felt that the hotel was waiting for her to make a choice. Not just her, all of them. She could sense it in the rhythm of the storm, in the hush of the corridors, in the quiet glances of the other guests. The hotel was not a place of answers. It was a place of thresholds. Near midnight, the silver-haired innkeeper knocked gently on each guest's door. No words were spoken, only the calm look of someone who had guided many travelers before. Evelyn, the boy and his mother, Nathan, and the older woman with her sketches all found themselves gathering in the lobby. The fire roared brighter than ever, casting warm shadows across their faces. They sat together in silence, listening as the rain pounded the windows and thunder rolled far in the mountains. Each of them held something, The boy his puzzle box, Nathan a small compass, the woman her filled notebook, and Evelyn her shining key. The innkeeper stood at the hearth, his voice steady as the storm. You are here because the storm called you. Each of you carries a burden, a question, a memory you have not yet laid to rest. The hotel offers no endings, only doors. But you are not alone. Tonight, the storm breaks, and with it, the choice becomes clear: to sleep in peace or to walk further into the journey. His gaze swept over them, lingering on Evelyn for the briefest moment. She felt the weight of those words settle deep inside her. The fire flickered, and for an instant, the room shifted. Doors appeared where the walls had been. Not ordinary hotel doors, but glowing thresholds, each shaped differently. Behind the boy's chair shimmered the forest of twilight she had glimpsed. Behind Nathan's seat, a windswept coastline stretched into infinity. The older woman's door revealed a tower lined with shelves of unfinished books. And behind Evelyn, she felt it before she saw it. The Garden of Storms, with its glowing flowers and reflective pool, waiting for her return. The doors pulsed gently, patient, alive. No one spoke. There was no need. One by one, the guests rose. The boy squeezed his mother's hand before stepping into his forest. Nathan tilted his head as though listening to some far-off call before striding into the coast. The older woman clutched her notebook to her chest and entered her tower with a fierce determination. Evelyn stood last, the crystal key bright in her hand. She turned once, meeting the innkeeper's calm eyes. "Will I come back?" she whispered. His answer was simple: "Only if you need to." She nodded, then stepped into her garden, the hum of the hotel wrapping around her like a final lullaby. The storm outside broke at dawn. The mountains lay washed and shining in the morning sun, the rain finally stilled. In the quiet courtyard, lanterns swayed softly in the breeze. The Hotel of Sleep remained where it always had, solid, waiting, timeless. And within its walls, for every weary traveler who found it, doors would always be waiting.